In today's video, we're going to be venturing out into the Forest of Dean to try our hand at close-up photography, using a cost-effective alternative to a dedicated macro lens that allows us to capture some of the smaller details within the woods without breaking the bank or taking up too much space and weight in the camera bag, while still enabling some fine detail shots like this.
Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the glorious Forest of Dean. Now you catch me out this afternoon because I've got a couple of hours of light to play with, and I've got a new toy. Now I came specifically for this, but it hasn't got what I want anymore. Well, today's video was supposed to be about macro photography, or rather close-up photography. And this stump, last time I came here, was just completely covered in mushrooms. So I figured this might be a good area to come to find at least a few remnants that are left in the middle of December. Yeah, they're gone. Right, okay. Well, let's have a talk about close-up versus macro photography first, so we know what we're doing. So this is my new toy, and this is the Nisi Close Up kit. Now, I've bought this with my own money. Actually, I'm lying there. My son and my wife bought me this as a birthday present. So this isn't sponsored in any way. I've got this because it's something I wanted after I saw Steve Stain using it, and he let me use it to photograph a mushroom. So I thought, that's really, really handy. Now, because I only carry one lens, my 24-200, it will get me closer to subjects, so I can do close-up work. But what is the difference between macro and close-up photography? Okay, so, right, so macro is a ratio of 1:1. Now, that's to do with your sensor. So the scene that you are shooting has to be the same size as your sensor, not the object that you're shooting, the actual scene. So if I was to take a piece of paper that was exactly the same size as my sensor, so my sensor's 35.9, I think it is, by 23.9, somewhere around there, millimeters. So if I had a piece of paper exactly the same size, and I walk towards you with it, at the point where that piece of paper completely fills the frame, that's where you've reached a 1:1 ratio, because you're photographing something exactly the same size as your sensor. Now that's a 1:1 ratio of magnification. So anything further than that is still considered macro photography. Anything less than that isn't considered macro photography, it's considered close-up photography. Unless you get to a 10 times zoom, a 10 times magnification, and then it's called something else. And I'll try and pronounce it for you. Okay, photomicrography, photography, photomicrography. It's PHOTOMICROGRAPHY. I can't do it. Anyway, that's your really in-depth stuff. That's when you're photographing the mustache on a bedbug type of photography. Really, really close, really, really detailed. Now you might say, well, why don't you just buy an extension tube? Well, the beauty of this is it goes off on the end of your lens. So I don't have to take my lens off the camera. And like I said, I only use one, so it never comes off, and I haven't got any dust on my sensor. So I can just attach this out in the field in stormy conditions or whatever. I just got to wipe it, attach it and go. I'm not taking the lens off, attaching something, then attaching the lens to that and getting all sorts of rubbish in on my sensor and on the back of my lens. Okay, so there's my uses for it. But can I actually make it work? That's another matter. So I've come out to the Forest of Dean to try and photograph mushrooms that don't exist. So I've got to find something else. And I think I found at least something I can try it on. Right, okay, so I've set up here and I found this little half an acorn with a shoot sticking out of the top of it. it's contrasting red and green against these browns in the background and the leaf that's behind it. So I figured that's going to be a little test subject for me, and that should work, hopefully. It'll give me something small as well to focus on. I would say that that is probably 11 millimeters high. So I'm out at 200 mil, and my camera will not focus because of the focusing distance I've got. Now, I showed this in a video previously when I was at Cannock Chase, but at 200 mil, my focusing distance is approximately from my elbow to the tip of my finger. So what's that, 2 feet, somewhere around there. With this attached, it actually becomes about 17 centimeters from the end of my lens. So how far that is from the sensor, I'm guessing, is probably double it, so about 34 centimeters. And that's at 200 mil. So this should allow me to focus, because that's the one thing it does. It brings your focusing distance down so much and allows you to get so close to the subject. Okay, there's dedicated macro lenses out there that will get a lot closer, but for the amount of time I'm going to be using it, I think that's perfectly fine. Right, okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and focus on this with you guys in camera. So if I switch into video mode and then press record, as you can see, my scene is blurry, and I am now pressing the autofocus button, and all it's doing is tracking. It won't pick up anything. So let's screw on this, our little Nisi attachment. Probably best to do it before you do anything else, but there we go. We're on. Okay, already it's made a difference. So it's allowed me to focus on the leaf there, but my composition is off. So let's adjust that. I think I am a fraction too close. So I need to come back just a touch, because I haven't allowed for the fact I've screwed that onto the end of my lens. Let's do something around about there. Okay, let the camera settle. And there we are. Looks like we are focusing on our subject. Hooray! Lovely.
Well, not the most enthralling of subjects, but it does give us a good idea of the Nisi Close Up Lens's capabilities. So let's fast forward a few months and see if we can find ourselves a few wildflowers to photograph.
So I think this is going to be a great little insert into my bag. Fairly light compared to a lens anyway. It is a thick bit of glass, it's quite heavy. And I think I'm going to get some use out of this. And it's certainly one of those ones that's nice to have in the bag for a day when there's just not much else going on. You know, blue sky days. You can do a little bit of close-up work. And it's giving you another option in your bag that might save your day. And just like that, it's 4 months later, and welcome to April, everyone. Now, there's still nothing going on here, so I think as we're now in spring, we'll go off and we'll hunt down some wildflowers, see if we can put this close-up lens properly to the test. A couple of better subjects, hopefully.
Well, after all that time, I was keen to put the lens through its paces and see the type of results I would get with my camera lens. But the small wildflowers I seek seem to be proving quite elusive. So let's start with something a smidgen bigger.
So after a bit of wandering around, I've come into the pine area we've got in this section, and I found a little fir cone on the floor. Well, it's a group of fir cones, but there's one in particular that looks quite nice, and then you've got the fir itself behind it. So yeah, with the little branch leading in that it's sat on, I think this will make my first subject of the day. So I am focused in at around about 140 mil, shooting at f6.3, 1/6 of a second, ISO 64. Let's go and see if we can find some flowers.
So a fairly straightforward composition of the pine cone, but it gives me some things to ponder on. I'm happy with the level of detail in the cone, especially in the tiny egg sac looking things on it. But with hindsight, I would have liked the background to have been a bit softer, so photographing this at 200mm to narrow my depth of field a little more, or finding a subject further from the branch would have helped to do this. But at least we've got something in the bag now.
Okay, I've been walking around for about 45 minutes. I haven't found anything, so I think I need to get out of the more dense area of the woodland and head off to a little pond area that's a bit more open. See if I can find something there. A bit damper, a bit more light. Give that a go. I'm not going to lie, I think I'm lost. Right, well, so much for that theory. Doesn't look like there's any wildflowers around here at all. So let's go and find somewhere a bit more open. Okay, so we're out in the open. And I was expecting to see quite a few more wildflowers than this, I'll be quite honest. But it looks like the cows have been grazing here, so that might be a potential reason why there isn't so much. There is plenty of gorse, so I think I'm going to quickly grab a shot of the gorse because they kind of look like snapdragons. But out in this exposed area, we've got a lot of wind, so I'm going to have to get in it. Looking forward to that. Okay, this looks like a little bit of seclusion in here, and I do have a little bit of space, so hopefully I can find a flower that's right at the front that's nicely opened. Okay, looks like we got one, but you get the slightest breeze, this bush does move because it's just a branch coming in from underneath. But I think if I use my little vlogging tripod to support it, help stop it moving, that might help. Geez. Well, even with my tripod helping to support that then, that proved to be rather difficult. The wind's picked up a bit as the day goes on. That's what tends to happen. And yeah, it didn't want to keep still for me. So I've taken about 10 attempts on that. Hopefully I've managed to get one where it stays still. Right.
So I've managed to achieve a softer feel to the background by keeping a good distance between the front and back subjects and shooting at f6.3. Now I use the Helicon Focus software to merge the images I create, which will comfortably align uniform subjects within a stack, but the wind was contorting the shape of the petals, which made this impossible to do. So even after so many attempts, the minor movements from the wind still caused some haloing when the focus stack of images was stitched together. And as this was worrying me, I figured I'd better try and find some way of getting something a little bit more sheltered.
Okay, so in a vain attempt to keep the wind away from the flower, I'm using my bag and my jacket as a bit of a windshield. Yeah. Should help a little bit.
Well, unfortunately, we had the same problem again. The stems on these little flowers can't be much more than a millimetre or two wide, and even the slightest of wind causes movement. And unfortunately, it was time for me to make a move back home and say goodbye. But I couldn't leave you guys like that, so it was back out the following day in some calmer conditions and a more sheltered spot to grab a couple of more shots. This time, I get it right. So check out these 3 images, guys, and then we'll pop back at the end and I'll finally say that goodbye.
So there is one drawback to this lens, and that's the fact that you're restricted to the amount of distance you can be from the subject. So this is as far away from this little mushroom, I think it's a mushroom, probably a toadstool of some form, that I can get. And as close as I can get to it is probably about there. So you are restricted to one distance away from the subject. That's the biggest downside, but as long as you're aware of that, I think you can work with it. Well, with the wind picking up as it has, I think that's going to be enough for today. I can see why people go to mushrooms rather than flowers. Far more static, usually in more of an enclosed space and far more easier to shoot. So, come fungi season, then this is definitely going to be handy. If, like me, you're just interested in doing some close-up work as a bit of a side shoot to what you normally shoot, grander landscapes, woodlands, that sort of thing, I think it's a brilliant little accessory to have in the bag. Small form factor, so it doesn't take up much room, doesn't weigh that much, to be quite honest, compared to a lens. It's heavier than you think, but yeah, it doesn't weigh as much as a lens. So yeah, I think yeah, it's going to be a handy little purchase for me. And roll on fungi season, or days that are less windy. So all that leaves me to say is thank you very much for watching, guys. If you do like the channel, then please like and subscribe. That would be brilliant. I would appreciate it. Helps to pump the channel out to more people out there. And with that, it's goodbye from me. I'll see you in the next one.